This has challenged my faith more than just about anything else in my life.
Author of God, the Master of Sin and Save the Beautiful, and founder of ChristianWritersBookstore.com. It's time to listen to this interview as I get a chance to sit down and talk to some great writers, some great Christians, see what God is doing in their lives. Good morning, everyone. Michael Furlonger here, author of God, the Master of Sin and Save the Beautiful, and founder of ChristianWritersBookstore.com. I'm working on a new project where I get to sit down and talk to some Christian authors, some Christians, some up-and-coming authors, see what they're working on, see how God is using them. And today I am privileged to invite Samantha Morgan, who is the author of a book called Miraculously My Own, which is set to come out in January 2021. It's about adopting her son from Russia. Her ministry is offering support for women suffering from infertility and offering hope through adoption. So I have a lot of questions, a lot of off-script topics, so don't be afraid. But let's first get to know our up-and-coming bestseller. How are you today?
I'm good. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you that you found time to do this. I know we had to push it back a bit because of your involvement with some of the stuff going on in the States, which, for the sake of popularity, I won't get into too much. But so let's just start off. Can you share a bit of your testimony, your faith, and your church upbringing?
Yeah. So I grew up not in church, but God was always important and a part of our family. I wouldn't say that our family was, the family that was in church every time the doors were open, but it was always, I was brought up to fear God, to have a love for God, and to have that fear of God. And so by the time I was a teenager, I started taking myself to church and really diving in deeper on my own. And so I've always been had a strong faith in Christ and knew whose I was and knew that I was His. But it wasn't until I was married and probably 23 before I actually got baptized. And so it was never pushed in our family to, some families just push things a little bit harder than others, and it was always just a more discovery in our family, and if that's what you chose to do. So it wasn't until I was married till I actually got baptized. So
thank you for sharing. I think I grew up in church. I knew of Christ when I was 5 years old, but I wasn't baptized till maybe 26 or 27. So no judgment there. But I think it's awesome that in today's world, too many shadows. In today's world, there's a lot of people in the churches, but there's not a lot of fear of God, which, as Scripture says, is the beginning of all wisdom, right? So anyway, so I just want to commend you. Welcome to the body of believers, the family. Anyway, next question. I'll move on. So as we were talking, you shared a promotional tool, shall we call it, a image, and you shared about the prodigal son, which is in Luke 15. Now I'm going to share with our audience. If you don't read the Bible, you should. But if you don't know the story of the prodigal son, it is so Luke 15. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees and let's call them new converts or old converts, I guess, of the faith. And so he's telling this story of this man who had two sons, and the one son was the older brother. He was good. He was a good kid. The youngest son said, "Dad, I'm tired of this farming business. Give me my inheritance today. I want it today." So the father gives him his inheritance, and the son leaves the farming business, and he goes off and he lives his life. He gambles. He does a lot of things that are questionable morality, shall we say? And Samantha, you identified better with the older brother. Now, sorry for those. The younger brother does end up realize that he has wasted all of this money, all this inheritance on frivolous living, and he comes back to the farm and says, "Dad, take me back. You treat these servants better than I was being treated. Take me back." And the father just goes up and hugs him and says, "Welcome home. I'm glad you're back." He says, "This son of mine, he was dead, but now he's alive." So it's a great story, a great parable telling us of God's immeasurable amount of love and grace and forgiveness for us. But Samantha, you identified better with the older brother, the one that was the good kid, the goody two shoes of the family. So I would like for you to try to share a bit on why that is that you relate better with him.
Yeah, well, and we had this discussion, and there's two sides of Christianity. There is the prodigal son that goes away from Christ, goes and does their own thing. They don't believe in Christ. And there are Christians who think, okay, this was me. I'm checking off all my boxes. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I have a feeling of loyalty and obligation. And if I check off my boxes, I should be blessed. And so that's kind of where I was, in our marriage earlier. Is I wasn't the partier. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke, didn't do all of that stuff, didn't have sex before marriage, all of that stuff that you're supposed to do. And so when my husband and I got early on in and I'm kind of mingling some of our topics that we were going to talk about, but early on in our marriage, we wanted to build a family, and it wasn't happening. And we suffered for years and years of infertility. And the question's like, why? I've checked off my boxes. I've done what I was supposed to do, God, and now you're supposed to bless me. And so bringing it back to that prodigal son is his brother. I think a lot of times when pastors talk about the prodigal son story, they stop after his father welcomes him back. But there's the rest of it. And if you don't care, Michael, if I go ahead and read it out of my NIV, the rest of it, after he welcomes him back and after they have a party and all of this, it says, meanwhile, the older son was in the field, like he always was, working. When he came near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. And that's where I was. I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at doing the right thing and not being blessed. And I think that that's where his older brother found himself. I'm tired of doing what I was supposed to do. And I see everybody else getting blessed. And so he refused to go into the party. So his father lovingly came to him. His father didn't say, get over it. My other son is home. You need to get over it. But his father came where he was. And he said, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've slaved for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when your son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. His father said, my son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and now is alive again. He was lost and is found. And I didn't realize, the older brother didn't realize that checking off my boxes wasn't going to get me in heaven. It wasn't going to fulfill me with Christ's love. And like this father said, everything that I have is yours. You know, everything that I has. Did he ever ask? You know, did the older son ever ask? And I think sometimes we forget that the prodigal son's blessing, everybody else's blessing at the time that looks wonderful and great, it doesn't take mine away. It doesn't take yours away. Your blessings don't take mine away from my Father. And so I think I had such a deeper appreciation for this story after you look at all three sides of it and realize your Father loves you, whether you have run away from him or whether you have always been with him. He loves you, and it doesn't take away your inheritance on either side. You're always welcomed home, and your Father's always going to meet you where you're at, whether you have ran away or whether you become angry with him and say, why me? What's going on here? So yeah, I have a little bit different view and a different appreciation for that prodigal son that I didn't before infertility and going through the trials. So
I really like that you're not embarrassed to focus on that, because I remember we were talking in our private emails, and I shared that, and you said, that doesn't make me sound like a horrible person, does it? Like, no, like I totally get that, and I think I'm gonna veer off a bit more to, if anybody from my church or my church history is watching, then I'm talking to you. Where we're for the past decade, I've been going to like these overly charismatic churches, and they they're speaking in tongues, and they're shaking, and they're doing their thing, right? And you get those pastors that say, if you're not speaking in tongues, if you're not convulsing on the floor, if you're not this, which we can argue where that comes from later, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. I remember wrestling with my faith on that very topic of like, God, I need these spiritual gifts to have evidence of my my salvation. And of course, I go to, I think it's 2 Peter chapter 1, where he talks about making your calling and election sure. If anyone wants to look that up.
But again,
anyway.
if they're gifts, then why would everyone have them?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would it be special? Like, if someone is supposed to have a certain gift from the Holy Spirit, everyone's not supposed to have that gift, or they wouldn't be gifts.
Yeah, for sure. That's something my wife and I were talking about the other day, and this is, for people watching, this is why it's meant that we veer off course.
Yeah. Okay.
But my wife and I were talking about this the other day, is that the church is built up of many different things. Not everyone's going to be the pastor. Not everyone's going to be the teacher. Not everyone's going to be the prophet or the speaking in tongues and stuff. And we need to, I believe that if we're going to make a headway as a church, we need to allow for room in that. I love the Word of God. I read it. I study it. I love it, and I will share it even if it makes you uncomfortable sometimes, right? Okay, my father, for example, he just hates to read. Like, he does not read. I wrote a book once that was 27 pages. That's the biggest book he's ever read. He's not reading it. But my father has such a heart for charity, such a heart for giving, such a loving heart, that maybe he's not going to be the person you go to get for biblical questions. He should send you maybe my way. But to him, first nature of giving and charity and loving, that's first nature to him. For me, it's second nature. I'm greedy. I like my money. I want to hold on to my money. But I have to no, God, you called me to be charitable, to give, so I'm gonna try to be charitable and give. But for him, it's first nature. So that's all I had to
Yeah.
say. Do you have any final thoughts on it?
No, you summed it up perfect.
All right, awesome. So this kind of actually leads into the third question. Um, so you and your husband decide to. I'm going to share your website in the description below. So if anybody wants to read this story, they can find it there. But so you share that you and your husband decide to embrace two children from Russia. So in one of your blog posts, you share this. I can't read my own writing. This frightening reality that these children in these orphanages, often they end up growing up and being called into either the drug ring or into prostitution. So can you share a bit on that process and on that embracing, loving embrace?
Yes. Well, and all over the world, there are kids that need homes. So you can imagine there's over 400,000 children in the foster care system in the United States. So all over the world, we have kids growing up without mothers and without fathers. And you can imagine the trouble that they can get into. In Russia, everyone has an ID card. Just, kind of like our ID card, our driver's license, something like that, an issued card. And if they age out, we learned while we were there, if they age out of the orphanage, their ID card is marked orphan for the rest of their life. There is no getting out from under that title. It depends on the education they get, the jobs they get. So the smart ones that want to make money, make a living for themselves, they do end up in the drug rings and the prostitution, and they're going to find ways they're going to find other avenues. And that's usually, a lot of them end up that direction.
That's amazing. Sad, but like it's an amazing reality. And even in the States, I'm again, not to get too political, but I read some of these people and they say that if the father is kicked out of the house, or like there's the father absent, like the reality of prison and drug, like people are looking for that sense of belonging, that sense of family. So in America anyway, that's the role of the father is so important, because if they don't find that in the home, they will find it in the streets, essentially, right?
Yeah, that the father figure, and going back to Christ, if they don't know Christ and they've not been told that they have a father that loves them, a spiritual father that loves them, if the father in their house is gone, then that mother is trying to fill two roles, and she's trying to fill a role that she was not designed to fill. And so they're going to go seek that fulfillment out in other ways.
Yeah, for sure. I was hoping you talk a bit on the what we mentioned, but you shared in the blog post about the back and forth that you had to go to Russia to find the child, and then you had to, I don't know, do paperwork there. Then you had to come back to America, and then you had to go back. I think you said like 3 or 4 times you have to go back. And
Yeah.
you also shared the what I can only think of as kind of like the heartbreaking of making such a journey, and then them saying that no, this child is gonna stay with his or her mother. And anyway, could you just share? Was there a time where you were like, nope, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore?
Well, and in an international adoption, you have to make several trips, and Russia has actually closed their door to international adoptions. Currently, the governments got mad at each other, and so they thought that would be a good way to punish Americans, apparently. But in my eyes, it just hurts the children. But there are several countries that you can adopt from internationally. And in Russia at the time, you had to make 3 trips. The first trip, you met the children. The second trip, you went to court for the children. And then the third trip, you could go pick them up and bring them home. So, and this is really what my book, Miraculously My Own, is about, is our journey to my son, Rush. And we made the first trip. We got a referral for a brother and sister. We had planned on bringing 2 children home. And so we got a brother and sister for 2 children. We went over there, we met them, we fell in love with them. We spent an entire week with them. And 2 days before we flew back, we got a phone call saying that the aunt wanted to keep them and that we couldn't fight for them, that it was over. But we still had to fly back, and we didn't know. They said, we're sorry, we don't have any other kids for you to see, but you still need to fly back over. And so that point right there was the hardest place I had ever found myself in. I had trusted God up to that point. I believed that God had the kids that were meant for us. And I believed that I had met them, and I had their bedroom ready. We had clothes, we had showers, the whole town knew that these kids were going to come home. And so at that point, after I got that phone call, I was beside myself. I had no idea what to do. I destroyed the nursery. I was tired, and I was fed up, and I did want to give up. And I think that's where my husband picked up my pieces and said, no, we have to finish out, this journey. We don't know what's in store, but we're going to go and finish it anyway. And I think that's where you need support from others. When you get so tired that you're just like, I can't do this anymore, God sends you people and comforts you through other people to get through those times that are hard. But so we did end up flying back. And it's so hard because you don't know what's going to happen. They told us they didn't have any kids for us, but go ahead and fly back to this foreign country anyway. And so once we got over there, they did have a little girl for us to visit that they told us about. Without giving anything away, the little orphanage director pulled us in really close and said in Russian, and our translator translated it for us, I picked you out a baby. And they felt so upset because this didn't happen. And she had picked us out a baby, and that was our son. So without telling you everything that transpired, yes, we did lose our first kids. We did only bring home 1 child. We only brought home our son, Rush, at the time. And the little girl that we visited, that's part of the miracle of where she went and why and how all of that happened. But my faith, I had very little faith in that moment flying back to Russia that second time. I was tired. Like you said, I was tired. I was done. I had no idea what was going to happen. But God says faith of a mustard seed. I thought, okay, we'll go. Step out in faith. I'm going. This is all you're getting, God. I'm going. And my faith didn't move God in the least. It wasn't, because I always told myself, well, maybe I don't have enough faith, and maybe someone out there is saying the same thing. I don't have enough faith to get this done, or God doesn't see that I am faithful in him. But God is faithful to us. And my faith didn't move God, but my faith allowed me to see the miracle that transpired through our pain and through what happened to us. We didn't bring home our first 2 kids, but they did end up going back with family. And they got out of the orphanage that they had been in for 2 years, that no one had come to visit them. And so they did get out of the orphanage through our pain. Our son got out. The little girl that we visited got out. So God doubled our expectations. Even though we had to go through that painful moment, there was purpose in that. And I think that every painful moment that we can go through, that we do go through, all of the trials, there is purpose in that waiting. And we just have to wait to see what the miracle is on the other side of what God does with that pain.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it, I guess. Is that we never know the I remember once I thought of this, or a vision, I don't know what you call it, but I pictured myself walking with God one day, and like a little kid, we were throwing rocks into the river, and anyway, and I asked God, I said, why did you allow this, and like certain parts of my life that I'm like, man, I wish those never happened, and God kind of drew a graph kind of a thing saying that if this had not happened, this for this person wouldn't have happened. So, such as you were saying, I don't know the mind of God that
Yeah, don't. Yeah.
that you were like, maybe because you went for these two children, that sparked an interest in their family members, and like, not trying to make light or anything of what you went through, but just we never know the outcome, I guess, until we
Hmm.
stand for God, and He, Lord willing, He'll explain some of the great mysteries of our lives to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's lots of misconceptions with with adoption, and you don't really get to pick. It's not like they line kids up and you pick one out that you want. With international adoption, you are on a waiting list, and then they will send you a referral of um, picture, medical information, things like that. And we did have one referral before the kids that we Yegor and Krishina were their names, before the sibling group that we went to get. We had one referral. We weren't done. The timing wasn't right. Our home study wasn't finished, and the picture was weird. And so you hear of all those horror stories um, of parents getting taken advantage of, or something like that. And I just had so many red flags going off with that one. I really feel like the Holy Spirit will speak to you, and caution you on certain things. And we didn't feel comfortable with that referral, so that was the only one that we passed over before the referral for Yegor and Krishina. So you don't really get to pick. And then in domestic adoption, which means you're adopting from the country that you live in, the birth mother picks you. So again, you don't get to pick domestically or anything like that. You wait on a birth mother who is expecting or who has a baby, and they pick the family that they want their child to go to. So God really takes the picking out of, it makes it a lot easier.
So, can you just share a bit on your book that's coming out January 2021?
Yes, yeah. The book is titled Miraculously My Own. And, the title, having my son home, and the whole story, I shared a little bit about that, was a miracle. I saw a miracle play out in front of my eyes. And so there's a really well-known poem in the adoption world. It's well known. And it says, "Not flesh of my flesh, nor bone of my bone, but still miraculously my own. Don't forget for a minute that you didn't grow under my heart, but in it." And so that's really where when we got home with Rush, that poem just stuck out to me over and over and over, and just what a miracle God had for us to only bring Rush home, but also to get all of these other kids out of the orphanage at the same time was an absolute miracle that he used through our pain. And so So that's really where the title comes from. And it's really from our time span of infertility, and when we really decided to work through that infertility, because my husband was not on board with adoption to start with. So I really start there with the book about how God changed his mind and got us prepared for adoption to finally bringing our son home. So that's the time span of this book. Um, and what just, it was just a miracle. So it's titled Miraculously My Own. It's going to release January 14th, which is the day that we got home with our son. So it's a kind of a special date for us to be releasing a book on, and he's super excited. Rush is 9 now. He'll be 10 in December. So it'll be 9 years that we've been home with him when the book releases. And so it's exciting that we get to release it on such a special day, and he's super excited that there's going to be a book about him. And I keep telling him, I'm like, well, it's not really your story, it's my story to you. So, and some people go, it's kind of a touchy subject about sharing your child's story, because that's his story. So all of that personal information about his story isn't in the book. This is my story to him, because that's his story, is not mine to tell. So someday he may want to be a writer, and someday he may want to share his story and his side of it. But this is really my journey from infertility to adoption and what God did and transpired through that. So, but he's super excited. His little picture is on the cover, and he's thrilled.
That's awesome. I've been doing some of these interviews, and there's a lot of mostly mothers that have unique stories about parenting children with, well, in your case, adoption. Another one is with special needs and stuff. And it's like, I always use this example, is that my wife and I were looking for a house, and we look at the same house, but we will come up with two different stories or houses, right? And like, I like this house. This has lots of windows, and she's like, I like this house. This has a nice kitchen. We have different. It's the same thing, but we have different stories to tell, if you will.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Do you want to share more on that?
Do I need to?
No, you don't have to. I don't want to go somewhere and leave you hanging with a word on your tongue, right?
No, I think I'm good with that.
All right, awesome. So you go out, you do a lot of speaking tours. I'm gonna share the link in the description below. So if anybody wants to read up on what you do and more on your story, your blogs and such like that, I'll be in the description below. But you also do a lot of speaking tours at these at pro-life events, talking to teen girls about dating, saving sex for marriage, and body image. Do you feel like the church needs to take a stronger stance on addressing these issues?
Oh, absolutely. If we don't share our opinions and our beliefs about all of this, someone's going to. And in our society today, they could come up with all kinds of perverse images and ideas about dating, marriage, and sex. And so if we don't talk to them and share openly that it's okay to talk about these subjects and ask questions about it, they're going to ask questions to somebody, and somebody's going to be willing to tell them all about it. And so, yeah, I think that we need to talk more about it in church. I think that we need to be more open about it, and answer these questions that these girls have. and young boys, and just really, yeah, if we don't tell them, they're going to get it somewhere.
I totally agree with that. I remember the sex talk with my father, which apparently happens with all men. All have forever have had sex talks. Apparently they have. I did not. My dad said, I think I was watching TV or something, and there were some women on TV or whatever, or internet, and he said, "Son, women don't look like that in real life." And he said, "If you want to talk about it, we can." And I'm thinking, as a whatever it was, 14 or 15-year-old boy, I'm thinking, one, girls in real life don't want to talk to me anyway. So, and two, it's I don't know how other men think, how other boys think, but I don't like that topic. That is not a topic that I want to have with my father, with my mother, with anybody, with my pastor. I think, and you can correct me, I'm going to let you have the last words on this one. I think when it comes to the topic of dating and sex, you have to be the confronter because I don't think teenagers want to have that conversation.
Yeah, and you know what, which is funny that you said you didn't have that talk. I didn't have that talk either. so when you grow up with God in the house, it was just expected. It was like, don't do it. And luckily I was the older son, not the prodigal son, and I just go, okay, so I won't do it. And so yeah, you just, because I didn't have that talk, or you get it from school. I remember going through school and having those classes about what about this and that, and I remember my mom saying, "You're not sitting through those classes." So I was the weird kid that sat in the hall and had to write a paper on something else. Or I remember just like in junior high, the big thing was, we're going to teach these girls responsibility, what a child actually is responsible. And I remember, and my mom was right. My mother was right. I will say this. They had us bring in a sack of flour and dress this sack of flour up like a baby. And we were to carry a baby around to show us how difficult it is to parent. And my mother said, I remember her, she goes, "You will not do that, because a child is a blessing, and you will not carry a sack of flour around like it is a burden." She was right. She was right. But we also didn't have that talk of, anything else. So, you grow up and in these sex ed classes in school, they teach about sex and they teach about all this stuff, but then they don't teach you that it might not happen either. So, when I got married, I just thought, you get married, you wait 2 years, you have kids. But it didn't happen. I think that sometimes that we don't talk about the possibilities of infertility and how hard it is to actually conceive, and what that looks like too. You just grow up and you go, don't do it. Parenting is hard. Babies are bad when you're 16. So, I think we just have, if we don't talk about it in a loving way and realize that you don't save yourself for marriage for the husband you're going to marry. It's not about your body. It's about what Christ did with his body and how he sacrificed for you, that you should want to save yourself and be pure. And if you mess up, there's forgiveness in that. There's also forgiveness if you mess up, because it's not about your body and it's not about your future spouse's body. It's about what Christ did with his body and how he died on the cross for us. So if we don't talk about it, then yeah, they're going to get all kinds of ideas, like dressing up flour sacks as babies, people are going to come up with crazy ideas to teach them about sex and family and babies. So
I like to try to trick people. So I'm gonna let Samantha have last words, I guess. That if there's anything you wanna throw out there, this is not gonna be edited, so
okay.
be careful. But if you have anything you want to just share on any topic, just feel free.
Okay. I did. I just want to mention my website, rushtohopeministries.com. My ministry, when I started in 2017, was to really build connections for women struggling with infertility, from trying to conceive, miscarriage, child loss, and if they so choose, adoption. And so I just really wanted to put that out there for anyone struggling with infertility, if they're trying to conceive, if they're trying to get through a miscarriage or a child loss. Check out my blog. I help women write their story. So when they go to the blog, they will find blog posts about IVF. They'll find blog posts about miscarriage. They'll find blog posts about adoption. And they're not all my stories. So I help other women write their story. So if there's anyone out there that would like to share their story of infertility or miscarriage, child loss, adoption, I would love to help you. If you think, oh, I'm not a good writer, I've got a little story guide. I try my best to help them work through their story. And the craziest thing that I didn't know would happen while I was writing my book was how therapeutic it was to write it. And really, I had never grieved losing my first kids. And that's what they were. They were my first kids. And so, as I'm typing and writing through, crying while I'm writing it, it's so therapeutic to write out your thoughts and to write out your story and to write what God did for you. And so I just wanted to encourage women, if they're there in that spot where I was, that there's hope, and that if they need some encouragement in that time, that they can check out rushtohopeministries.com. They can contact me there. They can email me. I'm on Facebook, and I talk to people all the time on Messenger. And I haven't experienced everything, but I have women who have. So if they need someone to talk to that is not their mom or their brother or sister, if they need a stranger that will listen, that has been where they are, I'm always available.
I'm super glad that you I don't call it a service, but that is out there. I think that is needed in today's world. Place to connect. I just want to thank you. Your link's going to be in the description below, so if anyone wants to read up more on that, and when your book is out, I hope that you remember Christian Writers Bookstore. You send me an email, and we can get that up there. Help you promote and share your story. Anybody listening wants to support ChristianWritersBookstore.com. In the meantime, the link will be in the description below. You can also find my book. You can find other authors' books, and thank you so much, Samantha, for spending time with me today, and for doing this interview. Anyone listening, I hope you have a good day, and God bless. Bye now. Hey guys, thank you for being with us. I hope you enjoyed this interview. If you'd like to support the author or support ChristianWritersBookstore.com, the link will be in the description below. Also, if you'd like to get some merchandise like this shirt, ChristianWritersBookstore.com, shirts, mugs, we got a whole bunch of stuff. Feel free to check out the merchandise section on the website. Alright, I hope you guys have a good day. God bless. Bye now.